Hey, what's going on, guys? Rum Gaming here, back with another video. In today's episode, we are in a Pit 65, which means we did finally reach Torment 4 on our Spiritborn. This is the first time we've ever reached Torment 4 on a character before. So I just want to make a video just kind of quickly talking about the build. We're not going to deep dive talents or anything like that. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to get in, like deep into the skills, into the Paragon points, that sort of stuff. You can use the same build guide that I followed. But yeah, let me just quickly go in here and show you kind of how it works. It's very snappy. Uh, so I like to use Vortex in this build because Vortex can kind of group everything up, and then you can drop your ultimate right on top. So here we are. We'll Vortex into an ultimate. Well, they died before my ultimate even went out. But very tanky build. And a ton of CDR, and you have so much CDR to the point to where you're pretty much just like spamming your abilities. So let me go ahead and TP out. That's kind of what the gameplay looks like. Yeah, let me make a cut here, TP out. We can talk a little bit more about the build itself. Okay, so let's talk about the build real quick. So we're running Harmony of Bwaka, I think is how you say it. And on paper, it's not that great until you get down to the sort of bonus affix. So according to your secondary Spirit Hall choice, your skills are all additionally Jaguar, Eagle, Gorilla, or Centipede skills. So whatever you pick in your Spirit Hall here, all your abilities now become that. So all of my abilities right now are Jaguar and they're Gorilla. So if I go over Crushing Hand, I can see it's Core, Basic, Gorilla, and Jaguar. So that's pretty nice because that means now Crushing Hand will benefit from all Gorilla effects, all Jaguar effects. I think it's already a Gorilla, so it will benefit from all Jaguar effects. So that's why we run the helmet. The runes that we're running here are pretty much for defensive purposes. Bach and Mott. So we travel for 15 meters. We gain 1 shadow from the Rogue's Dark Shroud, reducing damage taken per shadow. Pretty nice from a defensive perspective. Another key, I guess we'll just talk about the imprint here. The main reason you want this imprint, again, is going to be for damage reduction, and you don't want to pass up on this because there is a ton of damage reduction that comes out of this. You get this Mystic Circle on the ground, and Gorilla skills empower you, and they grant you barrier for your max life. So you're able to constantly refresh your barrier. And you can see I'm running barrier generation runes in both my chest and my legs. And that's very important to this build, is keeping your barrier up. Moving down a spot here, we have these gauntlets of Moonrise. And you can see that we have Overpower. So Overpower is going to be very important to our build. We'll talk about it here in a bit with like the synergy between Rod and our ring and our neck. We'll talk about Overpower here in a bit. But the imprint here. So damaging an enemy with a basic seal grants you attack speed that stacks up to 5 times. The reason you want this is because our rod, if we look at the first part of our rod, your core skills are now additionally basic skills. So if we hover over Crushing Hand, we can see it's now core and basic, which means we're able to benefit from this by casting Crushing Hand. So that is very, very important. Critical strike damage, overpower damage is nice. You probably want to focus more on overpower than anything else. In our pants here, so the imprint gain block chance per resolve stack. So the more resolve you have, the tankier you get. And that's really where you want to go with the build. That's really where you want to go with your tempers, is you want to get as much resolve as possible. And all that resolve that you stack is going to give you a whole bunch of damage reduction, and it's also going to allow you to block. And that's going to make you very, very tanky. Now, what you can do with that block chance is, if we go over to our ring here, gain increased critical strike damage to 58% of your block chance. Blocking doubles this bonus for 10 seconds. So all that blocking that we're doing gives us a defensive bonus, and it also amps into critical strike damage as well. So from a defensive perspective, you really want this Gorilla aspect here. You really, really want that. You also really want the chance to block that will give you resolve stacks. Those are the 2 most important things in the starter build that I could recommend is those two aspects. Now, one thing that we kind of struggle with on this build is resist to all elements. If you look at my resist, I'm in T4 and I only have like 30-40% resist. So I can masterwork, I can get that up. But what we want is Yin's Blessing. So Yin's Blessing is going to be very good in this build, mainly just for the resist to all. That's really all we're after here. You can see at the bottom, casting a skill has a chance to cast a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown. So that's pretty nice, but can only occur once every 8 seconds, so it's not that strong. Now let's kind of talk about the build itself. So everything else that we're going to talk about here is going to be synergized around the core gameplay loop of what's happening. So we've talked about all these items. We talked about this ring. Let's talk about the main thing that's happening here. So you want the rod because that turns your core skills into basic skills, and we can benefit from an aspect from that. And you can see here, when you cast at maximum vigor, your core skills consume all of that and return to full damage, cast at the largest size, and become guaranteed critical strikes. And that critical strike damage is increased for each point of vigor spent this way. So essentially what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to completely build up your vigor as high as you possibly can, and you're wanting to drop that and spend that. Now, where the synergy comes in is with the Ring of Midnight. So when you critically strike, you regain 50% of the vigor you spent in the last 2 seconds. So what we're doing is we're spending all that vigor for these huge crushing strikes with the rod, and we're regenerating all that with the Ring of the Midnight Sun. Now, this also works with our neck as well, because after you spend 275 of your primary resource, your next core skill is guaranteed overpower. And the overpower is really what we're fishing for. And if you can spend enough primary resource, if you can build this up, basically you're always going to be overpowering. So you really want to focus on getting max resource. I can't remember what the number is. I think it's like 230 or something you want to be at. And you can actually reach that with a consumable, this elixir of resourcefulness. So that's going to give you resource cost reduction. And the main thing is maximum resource. So the more max resource we have, the closer we can get to that 275, the more that we can spend, the more overpowers that we will generate. And if you go into the description of the video and go to the guide, he has a section where he talks about that completely. He talks about exactly how much resource you need, resource generation, that sort of stuff. My build is nowhere close to that, so I'm not going to cover that section. But that's sort of the general loop that you're doing there. Now, another thing that happens here is I want to go into our Paragon board really quick. If we scroll to the right, you can see that we are running the exploit glyph. This means that this board is going to do a ton of vulnerable damage. So we want a way to apply vulnerable. If you don't know what vulnerable is, basically, I think it's like 20% additional damage that mobs take if you apply it to them. So, we want to make sure that this is getting on our targets. Now, if you look at the exploit socket, I guess, or glyph, you can see under additional bonus, when an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds. So that will apply vulnerable force, but it's not long enough because this can only happen once every 20 seconds per enemy. So we need a reliable way to apply this. So the way we'll do that is through this ring here. If you notice, I have Lucky Hit, 58% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. You want that Lucky Hit enchant on your gear. It's very vital. If you follow the guide in the description of the video, if you follow that guide, you want a way to apply vulnerable. Note that you can also replace Vortex if you want with Soar, because Soar will also apply vulnerable, but I feel like Soar is super clunky to play with. I don't like to play with it as much. So that's completely up to you, but you want to make sure that you are applying vulnerable to all your targets, because this tree will do a whole bunch of vulnerable damage. You can look at our nodes tolerance. We have some magic nodes that apply vulnerable damage. You get a ton through this exploit glyph. So yeah, make sure that you have a way to apply vulnerable. So yeah, if we look at our other boards here, so that's the drive board. Then at the bottom, we're running, this is just a starter board. We're running Headhunter. In the middle, we're running Spirit. with Viscous Shield. So this is very important, and you want to make sure that you're getting some barrier regeneration due to this. So that's why I socketed purple gems, because we want to make sure that we're keeping our barrier up, because we do a ton of damage with the barrier being up. And if your barrier falls off, sorry, I'm on the wrong one here. If your barrier falls off, you lose a ton of damage. So make sure you're keeping your barrier up. Make sure you have enough barrier generation, enough max life to give you a bigger barrier, and make sure that you're maintaining that as much as you possibly can. So, running Spirit with Viscous Shield, we're running Colossal with, I don't have it yet, unfortunately, Revealing here. This will give us a chance to knock down vulnerable enemies, which is very, very powerful from a defensive perspective. So I want to get that as soon as I possibly can. That's my next direction that I'm heading on my board. I should probably already have it, to be honest. So yeah, we're running Colossal with Revealing. And then this board is Sapping. So when you cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills within the same spirit in a row, restore 15% vigor and deal 30% increased damage for 5 seconds. And then the glyph that we're running here is going to be Menagerist. I had to look it up. It's Menagerist. So we're running Menagerist in this glyph socket. And this is actually pretty interesting. So grants 155% bonus to all magic nodes within range. So what this is going to be doing is going to be beefing up any sort of magic node around here by a whole bunch. And then the additional bonus, dealing damage with Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills increase all your damage you deal by 4%. This is multiplicative, and you can tell that by the little X down there. So this is why glyphs are so powerful in this game, is because once you get them to 46, they get a multiplicative bonus. And this is where that crazy damage really comes in, is once you get a good build and then you get strong glyphs and put them together, that's where you see like a lot of big numbers that are happening really fast, is the combination of the two. So that's a general overview of the Paragon board right there. And let me see if there's anything else we want to go over here real quick. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about abilities really quick too. So Crushing Hand is our main spender. So if we look at the modifier, Crushing Hand grants a barrier equal to 10% of the damage it deals for 2 seconds, up to 30% of your maximum life. So this is one of the reasons max life is going to be pretty decent on Spiritborn, is because you get bigger barriers each time. So max life is something you kind of want to have a decent amount. I don't have much right now, but as I start to get, better gear, that's going to be one of the stats that I really focus on, so that I can get bigger and bigger barriers. And another thing I need to focus on is resolve. So my build right now only goes up to like 11 resolve stacks, and you really want to be at like 20 plus resolve stacks. And the way you can do that is you can temper your gear to get plus maximum resolve stacks. So that's a modification I need to make to my build. Those two things right there, max life and more resolve on your gear, is going to make you way, way, way more tanky. And you can also see we're taking rampant Crushing Hands, so our damage is increased the more resolve that we actually have. Not much going on down here with Vortex, to be honest. We're taking Ravager in this. So what Ravager is going to do is it's going to give us a whole bunch of ferocity stacks. What ferocity stacks do is they give us attack speed. The more attack speed we have, the faster our core spells can hit. And not only this, while Ravager is active, our core skills dash to our target. So if you saw in the gameplay where it's dashing around a whole bunch, while that's active, while Ravager is active, that's what's making that happen. And the reason I'm able to press it so much is if we go down here to Prodigy's Tempo. So Prodigy's Tempo, let's just read it out. Every third consecutive cast of the same basic skill increases all purchase skills ranks by 2 for 5 seconds. Every third consecutive cast of the same core or potency skill reduces all skills' active cooldowns by 10%, increased by 2% for each of their skill ranks. So you're getting both of those because Crushing Hand is both a basic and a core skill. So that's why Prodigy's Tempo is going to be really good in this build. And really the main part is going to be the second part. Every third consecutive cast of the same core skill or potency skill reduces all your active cooldowns by 10%. So each time I cast Crushing Hand, all my cooldowns are getting reduced by a couple seconds. And the more ranks that you have on your skills, the more CDR that you're getting on your skills. Now, the ultimate that we're running, if you remember from the gameplay, we threw a big like circle claw thing on the ground. That's going to be coming from the Hunter, and this does a ton of damage. And there's not too much else to say about this, really. You throw it down, and it does a whole bunch of damage. If we go up to... Yeah, let's also take a look at counterattack. So I like to run counterattack because it gives me additional dodge chance, which is really nice. And this is a pretty good damage amp as well, because if you go down to the final node reinforced counterattack, passively increases your crit damage by 6% for every close enemy up to 30%. That scales up multiplicatively because there's the little X there. And then counterattack enhancement. Counterattack's cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds per ferocity that you have, per stack. So pretty good defensively, pretty good offensively. That's why I like to run it, just kind of pats the stats overall. Armored Hide. So this is what's going to give us sort of that tankiness. Will passively gain resolve stacks every 5 seconds. And you can also press this, like, for example, say you get frozen by a mob, and this will make us unstoppable and break us out of that effect if you get feared as well. So really, this is something that you want to be pressing when you start to kind of get low on resolve stacks. You can kind of track that down here. You'll have a little modifier. I think it's got like a fist on it. So whenever you start to drop stacks, go ahead and press Armored Hide, or anytime you're taking a lot of damage, that's when you're going to kind of want to press this button. And then one thing I did kind of skip out on is Vortex. So Vortex, what I like to do is grip all the mobs in with Vortex and then drop my Ultimate Hunter right on top of them. And that will do a whole bunch of damage, because without Vortex, for me, it's just kind of hard to keep the mobs together. If you want to go more defensively, you can go down into something like Scourge for that fear effect and some of the healing from it. But I just like Vortex for the quality of life. And then in terms of the bonus nodes that we're taking, pretty much everything that we're taking here is going to revolve around Resolve. It's going to revolve around Resolve stacks or Vulnerable for the most part. So those are kind of the three things that you're looking for in these side nodes. I think we're also taking something for block. Yeah, block chance is really strong with our build. And of course, maximum life and barriers. So that's kind of the synergies that you're looking for in your side nodes. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Again, this channel is going to be more dedicated towards getting to Torment 4, helping beginners get there for the first time, the first couple times, whatever. For more casual players, I'm not going to be pushing pits, I don't think, on this channel. I might have one character that I do that on. I don't know. We'll just have to see. I just wanted to share this information with you guys, see what you all thought about it. Let me know in the comments what you thought about just the guide in general, if I left anything out, all that good stuff. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you on the next one.